living. And then you talk about John Kabat-Zinn. He's an exceptional speaker, exceptional leader, and also someone who has mastered this. All I could say is that when you're talking to Sanjay, understand that Sanjay is still in a journey of mindfulness. This is something that I'm getting better with and I'm practicing. And I saw that lots of individuals had lots of thoughts about mindfulness, being calm, being present, being attentive, etc. But as John Kabat-Zinn says, mindfulness for me, and you can look at multiple interpretations of mindfulness, is really about concentration. Are you able to concentrate? Are you able to focus? Are you able to give attention? And clearly, the three things that you just mentioned in your brief understanding of mindfulness are the most important things. Number one is, are you present? Are you living in the now? In every interaction in life, the more interactions you have, if you are living in the now, that's fantastic. The second thing is, do you have a purpose? Do you, as you are having that interaction, what's your purpose? And generally, if you have your own purpose and start aligning your purpose to every interaction you have for your organizational purpose, then that's really mindfulness. And the third thing, as you mentioned, is non-judgmental. To make it much more simple, it is about acceptance. Human beings by nature, when we get into any engagement interaction, we have our own biases. We look at the world from our own eyes. And trust me, Vicky and Patricia, personally, I have had a lot of failures in the way I saw the world. My first job was 8 years of doing audit. So I was paid to be suspicious. So every time I enter into an engagement, I was very suspicious. That's how my mind was set up until I joined an organization which had 4,000 people. And suddenly I thought, why don't I have friends? When I was an auditor, everybody tried to be my friend. So this is where my journey of being mindful or, getting to understand emotional intelligence started. Now, you also said something very beautiful about, what is my way of mindful living? So let me tell you something that I was very privileged that I had a personal time with a monk. This monk is called Dandapani. We call him the monk with the MacBook. Very interesting character. And for those of you who are online, please try and get him on YouTube. What was very interesting is, I've had multiple ways to learn mindfulness, and I don't think I actually called it mindfulness. But, I had days when I was distressed for months. I was challenged. I was very thoughtful. I keep saying this, that when I was about 11 years old, I had chronic asthma. And I used to have steroids to get better. So I was at 11, I was 94 kilos, looked extremely plump, and the world shunned me, is what I thought. So my mind was constantly thinking about things that, were just what my mind used to think, up until I got some support and guidance. At that time, it wasn't really about mindfulness. But what I would like to bring to your attention is, and this is very important, is number one, you need to know what mindfulness means, which means you need to know that. And the second thing is you need to practice mindfulness. So the way I live is really about understanding it and then practicing it. On this session, I just want to tell everybody that more than 90% of us have never understood what mindfulness is because we are never taught. And like I said, mindfulness is about concentration. So let's take a test. How many of us have ever been taught how to concentrate? In school, were you ever told how to concentrate? Have your parents taught you how to concentrate? We have never been taught how to concentrate. Yet, how many of us have heard, please concentrate. Please concentrate here. Please pay attention to this. There's these constant voices that have been in our minds, whether it's our teacher or our parents or our society that tells you to concentrate. But if you are never taught how to concentrate, how will you really concentrate? Number one. Number two is, if you don't practice how to concentrate, how do you get better with it? So I have personally taken a lot of time to understand what does concentration mean, number one, and number two, how do I practice concentration? So two things I would just like to say. Number one is we all have a mind. Our mind is a surface. On that surface, we have different experiences. We have anger, we have jealousy, we have love, we have compassion, we have hatred sometimes, and we have zones also. We have zones like there is science, there is numbers, there's multiple zones on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
What is very important is how you take every interaction or every thought in your life and move it to a part of the brain or your mind where it has to sit. The more you can practice to do that, the more you become impactful, effective, and the more you can really become smart at being more mindful. So for me, it's really a little bit of science, but it's really becoming practical to know what mindfulness means, and then of course practicing it. I encourage a lot of people. We've now been in the era of COVID, and I can bet everybody on this call has had some impact of COVID. Now, the moment I use the word COVID, what happens in your mind? Everybody's mind is gone to a direction. Their awareness goes to a section of their brains where it is hurt, it is pain, it is really, that is uncontrollable. Human beings feel sorry. You feel constrained. As soon as I say COVID-19, you're taking your thought and placing it in that part of your mind. You're building that awareness. Now, suddenly I say a new baby was born. As soon as I say a new baby was born, you can see everybody on this call has suddenly taken their brain to that corner where it's happiness, it's beauty, it's laugh, it's joy, it's sacred, it's magical. Is it right? So if you are able to take every conversation in your life and put it in where you would like it to be placed, that is understanding what mindfulness is and also practicing mindfulness. So I think that's what I practically do. That every conversation I have, before I enter a conversation, I ask myself, and as a CEO, I have to jump into conversations that are very different every 15, 20, 30 minutes. So the first question to me is, number one is, I'm going to focus on the now, in the presence. Number two is, what's my purpose? You know, and then number three is, I'm going to be non-judgmental. Remember, as a CEO, you can be very judgmental. So non-judgmental is you definitely are going to have acceptance. So whatever you face, you will accept that. So let me stop here. But I just want to tell everybody on the call, first learn what mindfulness is and practice mindfulness. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it puts the last part very simply: acceptance, non-judgmental, just accepting things as they are. And I'm going to come to Patricia because I think, Sanjay, you mentioned something very interesting when you say you have so many things to do. Now, I've known Patricia. If she's not attending this board meeting, she's chairing this other meeting. She's trying to run Stanford Seed. She has a family, she has a husband, and she's sometimes jumping all over the place. Patricia, when did it become apparent to you that mindfulness was going to have to be a concept that you embodied in your life, and
Um,
how?
I think for me, I think the moment was in very many different ways. At first, I started to realize that I'm not remembering things, and then I put it down to age. You tell yourself, no, this is the age. My goodness, we start to forget things and everything else. So I use that as an excuse for a while. I used to always pride myself in telling people that you have the first 5 minutes to make an impression. I had the attention span of an ant, and for me, I thought, oh, great, it is a way of getting people a lot sharper, a little bit more precise, and a little bit more to the point. But what I realized is all that was wrapping itself around was a situation where half the time I didn't know what was going on in my head and what was happening, and I was just not being still. And with that as well came a person who was able to sleep beautifully and wasn't able to because my mind was too all over the place. So mindfulness came to me through one of the business leaders who came on the program. Amazing business leader, ran a business in Kenya here called Norda Foods. Actually, any of you in Kenya who've eaten urban crisps, he started that business, run that business. And after going through the program, he recognized that his passion actually was getting people to find their inner self, their leadership. And he then went on and found out about the mindfulness program that was done by Google. You know, Google do this, search inside yourself. Yeah. And he started to talk to me about it. And the more he talked about search inside yourself, SIY as we call it, the more I realized, my goodness, I need to be still. I need to find a way to understand what this is about, because my mind is just all over the place. I mean, I can't sit somewhere 5 minutes, I'm looking at you, I look at my phone, I'm looking at here. And I realized I was actually not being very, very effective. So the first search inside yourself session that he took us through, I started to realize even things I'd struggle with, like I'll do yoga and you'd be told, breathe, listen to your breath. I'm like, I can't breathe. I don't know how do you breathe? You know, and they tell you, let it go to your stomach. I'm like, how? I do like this. I realize is that all these skills are things that you need to learn. So even in search inside yourself, the first session where they tell you, okay, you're gonna take a deep breath. Patricia doesn't know how to breathe. And in my life, I'd convinced myself, I don't know how breath goes. I can't listen to it. I mean, how do you listen to breath? I mean, you know, how do you do that? Yeah. And all the other skills started to come into being, which allowed me to recognize that stillness is probably what's going to save me in a lot of ways. It's going to save me in terms of really trying to articulate what it is I want to do. What is my true passion? I am 55 years old. So you're sitting there thinking at 55 years old, you know, you have to figure out what it is you want to do, where when you look back, you want to be, what's going to be the next thing you do, and how do you just, if you're to stop and drop dead today, what is really the thing that you could sit down and say that I have done, not just for outside, but as a human being, have I lived out my full potential? And that's why this whole mindfulness concept started coming in. I then did the emotional intelligence, the Genos training. And over the last year, I think I've spent quite a bit of time trying to really get myself to a place where this former pride I have of saying my attention span is of an ant, of saying, actually, it's not even that. It's if I'm listening to somebody, how do I make sure I really hear what they're saying and still my mind long enough to hear that? And is also the other benefit it has to me is it improves my efficiency, because if I'm listening to people at this particular time, then it sticks, because fortunately I was blessed with a reasonably good memory, which I'd wiped out through the years by constantly having my mind here and there. It had been erased, and I used to tell myself the data is full, that you know, the storage is full. You know, I'm getting older, so storage has now become full, and yet storage actually doesn't become full. Storage is still available. That's why we have cloud. And cloud comes from mindfulness, you know, your ability to sit and listen at that time and let it really sink in and be still. But I think for me, I think it's very, very fundamental that the whole point about noticing when your attention wanders, you know, really identifying my attitude and gently learning how to return my attention to where I am. It is for me a skill that I realize is going to save me in very, very many ways. And that is why I've decided that's my next stage. And it's also going to allow me to figure out what it is I really want to do and drive from a passion perspective going forward. But yeah, so for me, it's a way of saving myself. At least I'll know how to breathe, if nothing else. And I can breathe now. The last training I did, in the last session I did, again, through Faraz, I realized actually I can follow my breath. And I promise that's a miracle, because through yoga instructor would take us deep breath. I'd watch my husband doing it very well. And mine just reaches here, you know, and I'm doing nothing. I'm like, you know, what is this? So I mean, those are some of the areas. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That was as hilarious as it was enriching. I must say, I think I share that with you, in that I think the first person who ever got me into mindfulness used to tell me, focus on your breath, because it's the one thing you carry around with you everywhere. And if you can learn to focus on it, you don't need anything else. So point when you realize, like you said, you have to pull back your attention to
Yeah.
something, or slow down
Yeah.
your racing mind because you're getting a
Yeah.
bit overwhelmed. The
Yeah.
breath becomes that thing. So
Yeah.
now that you both shared that you're on a journey and in a journey, I want to ask, what are those things that you have found have worked for you as you go along, and what are those things maybe you can say, this wasn't really for me.
Sure. And I'm sure they're very different things.
Yeah.
So let me just say, as I am a numbers guy. You saw that, I'm a CFO and all that. So for me, everything that works has to have some numbers as a big KPI on why it has worked on me. So practically, I mean, again, very nice to hear how Patricia, caught up to the span of attention. By the way, the span of attention nowadays in this new generation is less than 3 seconds. So it's
Like,
that crazy. Yeah, it's 3 seconds. Within 3 seconds, if you are not able to capture somebody's attention, then they are in a different zone. So that's the challenge we have. But to just bring it back to home and every life, I mean, as human beings, we all have between 25,000 to 60,000 thoughts in a day. You can understand there is so many thoughts. Just ask yourself, how many do you actually know or remember or recognize in life? Now, whenever you have thoughts, there are two types of thoughts that come to your mind. Number one is it's linked to your past or it's linked to your future. Unfortunately, human beings, the way our DNA works is, when we are thinking about the past, mind by default is connected to negative thoughts, which means most of us will start thinking about, I did not work, I was inadequate, I was challenged. He's always constantly thinking about the negative aspect of the world. And when you're thinking about the future, it's dreams. So, the two thoughts, there is an in between, which, Patricia also started saying is the now, and really thinking about the now. So what have I found out? Number one, I found out that, in this world, we are very distracted. And I think we're also distracted because of a lot of equipments, tools we have. So this phone that I'm holding is extremely useful and extremely destructive. If you know, you need to ask yourself a question: is the phone managing you, or are you managing the phone? That's a big question to ask yourself. Number one.
yeah,
Number two is, in a world where we are so connected. Look at this engagement session. We would not even have anything like this 5 years ago.
we wouldn't. Yeah.
The big challenge is, in a very connected world, loneliness has really, really increased. If anything, research says more than 76% of the world population is extremely lonely at the moment.
Wow.
We are lonely because we don't feel people. We don't get to understand them. We are constantly in thoughts that really are not the right thoughts. So you become much more lonely. And this negative and self-talk, negative self-talk is become part of our lives. I mean, I am a leader of so many people, and I'm regularly being challenged that you are very positive. How come you are so positive? And then I have a very default response to say, my blood group is B positive. I can't be negative. But the reality is, it's about being mindful, really. And the last thing is something that Patricia touched, and this is about what's your purpose in life. What's your passion in life. So for me, even though accidentally, I think the things that really resonated with me to become, much more positive and having mindfulness was accidental. Was about relationships. And I said, I was shunned in a society. So I really started looking for relationships. I used the Ikigai to find my purpose, you know. So, some of these things, and then you connect to mindfulness, so whether it is awareness, connections, having people in life, and if you ask anybody in Tanzania, they'll say Sanjay is a big networker. He knows how to network. Now, I only network because I know how important it is to become mindful, and it's very important. And then number three is really purposefulness. But I like something that Patricia touched is really insightfulness. She started knowing herself. She started understanding herself, including her breathing. Now, I actually, Patricia, I want to confess, I'm not yet there in breathing, but I'm there in many other things. is what I would say. So that's what I learned. Thank you.
Okay. So for you, connectedness was that thing, mindfully connecting with others and being that positive force that whenever you meet someone, there's that positiveness that you bring to them also for
Yes,
yourself.
because you are not wondering when you're with people, you are there for a purpose. You are
Yeah.
present in the now.
Yeah.
You are thinking about your purpose,
Yeah.
and you are non-judgmental. So it starts
Yeah.
from there. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
right. Thanks.
Okay. Patricia, what do you have to share? What were the things that you found were things that you wanted to engage in this journey, or rather, what are the things that you're finding as,
Mm.
um, that you want to engage further in this journey?
I think there was an element for me about preaching. What is it? Drinking your own wine, or
Preaching water and drinking wine.
well, yes, yeah. You have to preach the water and actually drink the water.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that every time I'd mentor a lot of people, and it's something I'd recognize, and maybe it was a step towards mindfulness, but I didn't recognize it,
Mm-hmm.
is very early on, when I'd be in a session, I'd spend a lot of time thinking about what I want to say, especially when you're in forums where you want to make an impression and everything else. So you spend your whole time, you've thought about it, you've studied it. So as you go into the meeting, you're sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to say something meaningful here, let me make sure that strategic point is heard. And as the meeting goes, the only thing is your whole head is like your eyes are staring forward, waiting for that moment where you're going to say this, make this super maiden speech of yours. So you actually don't even listen to what is going on around you, because you're just in your head.
Yeah.
Thinking about that. And what it does from a mindfulness perspective, that's why I started to join the dots around the mindfulness journey, that maybe in a way I was doing it, but not intentionally or deliberately, was that if you behave like that, you actually be there for what is there. And one of the most powerful things about being there, people, one of the most powerful things around influencing, one of the most powerful things about creating a presence is the way you show up. And some of the ways you show up is really around your ability even to build on what others have said, listening to what they've said, having the ability to hear it as you say, with all the intention, all the thought, no judgment, and then sit down and say, you know what, having heard that, my heart tells me this is how I build on it. As opposed to I had my idea and that is what I needed to present, and everybody has to recognize it was mine. I made that statement. So I think those are some of the other areas that I realized from a journey point of view. You start to go around and you realize that in a way that is all mindfulness. Sitting here listening to what Sanjay said, I had a thought, and then the thoughts that I had, he has said them. Now I have an option. My option is to, just because I've been asked, to repeat them and say, okay, it has already been said, but I'll say it anyway, as we like to say, and say it in your own words. Or sit down and think, my goodness, what is he saying there? What other thoughts does it trigger in me? And the power of mindfulness is that it allows your mind to really think and trigger even greater thoughts. And that for me is the biggest journey that he has taught me, because now when I listen, if I actually put my mind and stop the wandering, and as Sanjay said, don't look at the phone, don't look at this, don't look at the messages and the time. My biggest one is really time. Okay, now how much more time? How much time has passed? Don't look at all those things. You bring so much more power, because you're actually bringing of yourself and building it on so many others. So imagine you're now building this huge pyramid of greater things, as opposed to many individual towers of things which you hope at some point. So if I let everybody just create this image of if each of us are listening to each other and building on it, I have this, we build on it, it grows taller as a bigger thing going up. If on the other hand, we're all not listening, we're not hearing each other, we don't want to build, we all have our fantastic ideas and they're the only ones that matter, and yours is great, however, or but, or and all the statements that we make, then we're going to have all these wonderful silos that don't connect, and then you don't create, you don't build on the greatness that you can all be. So I think that for me has been the other very powerful thing. But as I say, for me, mindfulness also, from my perspective, is also a challenge. And because that was like a challenge and a new goal, now actually my latest goal and also my challenge. I wasn't going to admit it, but okay, let me just say it in the spirit of authenticity, because I know it's really hard. It is so, so hard with all the stuff you're doing. And I have told myself, actually, I can do it. I can be someplace, sit there and be there. And I recognize that for me doing that, there's going to be, something greater is going to happen. So it is my next challenge, because I've been looking for a challenge, and I've decided to say, okay, let this be my challenge. How do I still my mind? And what is the possibility that can come out from stilling my mind in terms of the power that I can have as an individual and the power I can have to give to others, etc. Yeah.
Wow, I hear you guys, and I hear what you're saying is, as much as we're thinking mindfulness is a center, I mean, you were telling ourselves, reduce yourself to one moment, but
Yes.
then reducing yourself to that one moment allows you to tap into so much more, as in,
Yes.
when I'm hearing you, Sanjay, talk about connectivity, relationships, then Patricia's talking about building on ideas. If you're in a meeting, you're building on other things. So even from that, you reducing your attention and being present opens up so much more that you could do. I think that's very powerful right there.
Let me add something else, Vicky, that Sanjay said, and I'm going to build an idea that he had and a thought that he had. And that was this point that people are a lot more alone now. And they're alone because all communication is happening on WhatsApp group, on social media chats, and those type of things. And the truth is, you think you're actually communicating, actually you're not. You find that there's a safety in those mediums. People weren't able to say something. Now you can do it because you feel safe behind the screen. But in that safety also brings in personality. And everybody knows, with all the emojis and everything else you give, it's just easy to click on that thing rather than say it. And that's where the loneliness and the connection gets lost. And what mindfulness, I think, does, it's really reminding us that, being and listening and just being at the other end for somebody is a lot of things. Even sitting in a room and somebody's talking and you're just there, listening, and they know you're actually listening, is incredibly powerful for somebody who's lonely, or somebody who's going through trauma, or somebody who's going through stress, or even somebody who just wants to vent, or somebody wants to test their thoughts and everything else. And I think as human beings, that is what creates a distinction between us and animals. And we really shouldn't lose it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. I think some of the most authentic leaders in the world, some of the things that have been said about them is the way that they were powerful listeners. That's one word I keep hearing. They were powerful listeners. I remember one word that was used to describe Barack Obama was when I was in his presence, I felt like I was the only one. Like when I spoke to him, I felt like I was the only one. And I don't think that's a lot of magic other than learning to stop yourself from having your own opinions and understanding that maybe other people have opinions as well. And I say that with a light touch, so no one should demonize me. But let's talk about leadership now. Let's talk about mindfulness and how that translates for you into the space of leadership. How do you see the two, or how have you seen the two connect back to your lives, your very busy lives, managing and leading and mentoring very many different people?
True. I mean, clearly, being mindful in life and being mindful in leadership are not a disjoint. They're pretty much part of you.
Yeah.
It's only that the concepts have further expand, because when you talk about mindfulness for yourself, it's being self-aware. It's really about you. Your relations, your passion, your ability to be in the present, your ability to concentrate. But when it gets to leadership, you are not the only person in the equation. So there is the self-awareness that Patricia very beautifully talked about. But there is also the awareness of others. So that is very critical. And the third aspect is are you able to focus? So three things come into mind as soon as you get into a leadership zone. So every time you are in a conversation or you are in an engagement, the question to ask is, how are you bringing yourself, and in what mindset are you bringing yourself? Which is very, very critical. Are you able to engage meaningfully? Are you having any baggage? Are you able to disconnect with your previous conversation and really concentrate in that conversation? So it's really about knowing yourself in that moment. And then the awareness of others is, what status are they in? What's really happening around them. Sometimes you need to also exhibit compassion, because it may be times like the times we're all facing at the moment are difficult ones, but also being mindful about others as human beings, as beings that need to be supported, need to be heard. Sometimes listening is a big art. Just sit there and listen, and that way you become more aware of the others. So, constantly monitoring them and understanding. Leadership is about knowing the people in your life, which is very critical. And the third one is, are you able to pay attention? And that's a lot of hard work, and it's much more hard because we are also intelligent people. Everybody on this call who's spending time today is intelligent. And when you are more intelligent, your mind is wandering much faster, because you're constantly thinking what you're not listening. You're constantly trying to create an opinion, a view about something. So, mindfulness in leadership is self-awareness, awareness of others, and ability to focus. Those three things are very critical. Let me stop here.
Okay. So, Patricia, you as Patricia, how have you brought mindfulness into your leadership positions, into the areas of influence that you have had or that you are having?
I think the first thing is exactly the point that I have made, really around, first of all, my team. We've all been through the training as a team. So even if you embrace it or you don't embrace it, you're aware of it. Yeah. Because I think with all these things, it's always a journey. You can't force it down somebody. You can't hammer there. You're going to be mindful. And I've told you you're going to be mindful. No. You have to make sure that people go through it and they figure out what resonates with them. And then what you find is you do it the first time, there's uptake, some are more open, others are less open. But the whole idea is to just create that awareness. Then what you find, then the interest, you've sown the seed. Then you test again a little bit later. And, the second time now, because somebody has had a little bit more time, at least the people who are a little bit more agnostic, have a little bit more to internalize it. And then the second time they embrace it a little bit better. And what you find with these things, as we both said, it's a journey. And because it's a journey, there's some people who are more ready than not. And so the question is, you cannot assume everybody's at the same stage in the journey. Yeah, even if you got into the car at the same time, you started at the same time, doesn't mean you're going to finish at the same time. And that is why I feel that, just creating the opportunities for me has been very, very powerful. And then for me personally, practicing it and trying to ask myself, have I really practiced it? Have I done it? At what point? And when I don't, really sitting down and reflecting now, what went wrong there? Was it really necessary to do that? Was it really necessary to go and, get that piece of cake at that particular point just because I could turn off the video? I mean, it's simple things like that, you start to hold yourself to account. And slowly you find that, in a meeting, you'd be distracted 500 times. Now, slowly I'm finding in an hour, whereas my distraction rate was probably once every 5 minutes. It's now maybe once every 15 minutes, and hopefully it becomes even less, because I am challenging myself and asking myself, is it really, really important? Is that really, how does it really matter? Why do I feel I have to do this now? I could do it after. And really playing that in my mind and bringing myself up, just remembering that tool of playing myself is fantastic. In the last training that I did, there's something that I picked out, and it's something which I always advise people all the time, even when I speak. When you go somewhere, just try and take out 1, maximum 2, 3 things out of any session you go to. If you try and take out more than 3 things, you're kidding yourself. If you could take 3 things, you are in a wonderful place. If you're in a very bad place, take out at least 1. But going somewhere and trying to take out everything that was said in 60 minutes is really a stretch. And what I recall from the last mindfulness session that we had, the one thing that I took out, which really worked for me, is because I really struggled with the breathing thing and all those other things. It also taught us this thing about, before you get into a meeting, this ability to get in a little bit earlier and just be still. really, really still your mind. And so increasingly now, I'm trying to get to meetings, log on earlier, yes, and just spend at least 2-3 minutes just being still and getting into the context of that particular meeting. I think that for me is a journey, and it's something I really want to cultivate, and it's something that I like to encourage a lot of people to do before you go into something, giving yourself that 2-3 minutes, maximum 5 minutes, to just collect yourself and be there and bring yourself, especially if you live the sort of life we all live, and I know I live, where I'm moving from one thing to the next. Your ability to delineate those things and then bring back presence to the next one is very, very powerful.
Wow, thanks for sharing. And I think also Sanjay alluded to that when he said, thinking about what mindset are you bringing to the next meeting? How are you showing up to the next meeting? And sometimes even what opinions are you showing up with to the next meeting, or what agendas are you showing up with, I guess, to the next meeting? Being able to just, in that moment, I guess, of stillness or of focus or of concentration, being able to go through the motions. But what are the little tricks that you have seen you are able to do just to keep yourself accountable, to ensure you have the consistency that is required? Because I think from talking to both of you, it's apparent that there are benefits that come out of this, and I think I'll ask that later. But what are those little tricks you found yourself using to just put yourself on check each and every single time?
Good. So I think sometimes it's not just little tricks, but they are very. I like what Patricia does with her team. And in my space, we don't call it mindfulness, but we still create a sense of connectedness, or commonness.
Yeah.
So a few things that we all do, in our organization, we have taken time as a leadership team to create the purpose of the organization. And that is really focusing on 4 or 5 very important things. So, your lens of looking at what success means is very common, is aligned. The more you spend time on ensuring everybody is on the same journey, the more you get alignment in your engagements. What we've also done, which is fascinating, is we've created a purpose of the leadership team. So something that Patricia has done probably. And I like what she said, is that everybody is not going to be in the same speed as you are in that journey.
Yeah.
But at least if you have created the purpose of that leadership team, again, you are able to bring everybody in the same zone to say, remember, we spent time, we talked about this.
Yeah.
So the third thing for us is, in terms of leadership now, talking about small tips, is every time you get into any engagement, if you start giving clarity on why are we here today, it kind of brings everybody into one zone. It's a simple way to just say, we are here. This is why we are here together. And together to that, if you add the clarity, so that allows people to focus. And if you add the clarity around what success will look like before we leave the room, it again brings everybody to concentrate much more, because they will be waiting for what else do we have to do to get to that outcome or an output. So whether it's strategy, whether it's a meeting, whether it's an engagement, why are we here together? How much time do we have? And also taking time to say what success will look like in the little things that we are doing. And trust me, it's like it's a journey, and we are trying to get better. Is we've actually taken time to take 2 of our leadership team members to say, every time we have an engagement, you two will police us to say, were we connected to the purpose? So these are 2 dynamic women in my leadership team. When we finish our engagement, they are supposed to give us feedback. They'll tell you, here you could have become, you should have had brevity. Here you should have, thought a little bit more. What that does is it allows us to win together, not to be personal to each other, but also to be, to use somebody else's awareness so that your awareness grows.
Yeah.
Because many times our awareness is developed since the time you're born. Your birth, your school, your parenting, your society, your community, your education. Multiple things make us who we are. So you should actually use the assets around you, and in this case, the leaders around you, to remind you that we had this conversation. Here you kind of slipped. Here you did well. So affirmation is also very important, as in bringing mindfulness, especially nowadays, as you're talking to your kids, your parents, your staff, taking time to affirm them, and be very, use behavior also in affirming that I really like this behavior of yours. I really like this input. So those tiny things make a big impact.
Okay, wow, yeah. So aligning purpose, let's remember, let's come back to it. Let's focus. Let's also get feedback on how we are doing in terms of our focus. What would you add, Patricia? What would you say?
Turn your video on.
Who, me or me?
To everybody.
I mean, in this new virtual world, it's probably one of the most powerful. Because we all know what happens when the video is off. And I know bandwidth and all those things is a fantastic excuse. And sometimes it's true.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not.
A amount of time. It is just convenient because it's just easier. It's like being in a meeting without being in the room. It's perfect. You spend yourself in the bathroom and, you can hear the sound in the other room. And then, when you hear a name called, you just dash in and say, yeah, okay, yes. So I think that is one of the most powerful things. And it's something that we need to do. Turn our videos on. If this is going to be the new way of living, it's one of the powerful ways of being mindful. Because with your video on, you actually have to be present, huh?
You have to be present, yeah. That's very nice.
And I would ask anybody here now to put their hands up. How many people with their videos off have done a few other things as they listen in the background? Who is honest enough to admit to that? Honesty. Reactions. Let's see.
We have, I think, a few words. Well, I don't know.
You see? Yeah. That's the actual honest truth. And we kid ourselves. So I think that's one of the best tricks. So what we do is when we want real presence, is we tell people, turn your videos on, and let's see how that goes. Yes, if bandwidth wavers, that's fair enough. If you're not talking, that's fine. But if so that's one of the big, that's one of the other things. And then the other thing is, the other trick that I told a lot of people is don't skid into everything. I mean, I used to do it all the time, including even getting on the golf course where presence, you'd be surprised, required there. You have a tee off time at 2:05 and 2:04.85 is when you're skidding there, gloves, everything, So there's an intentionality about this whole thing called mindfulness. And I think the times I do it, I realize, the calmer and the better if we can get ourselves intentionally into that place, I think everybody will win.
Wow, God, turn your videos on. And don't skid. I saw Zuhura's hand up, so I'm going to invite her just to say one or two things. But the one thing I have noticed each and every time I meet people who are going on this quite intentional journey is, and I must say this is almost true for all of them. Actually, it's true for all of them. It's that acceptance. There's a certain level of acceptance to everything, and this is how this thing is. How are we going to work from here to then? No time wasted on trying to craft things around and what needs to happen. So I find acceptance, I don't know whether it comes from that stillness. I don't know whether it comes from the intention of I'm just going to listen in. It's I don't know which one comes first, the egg or the chicken, the acceptance or the focus and the stillness. So I'm going to ask a few questions I have seen here, and one of them is, as a leader, how do you manage stakeholder expectation when you see a gap in mindfulness on their part?
Yeah, I guess I experienced that quite a lot. And, calling out people is very difficult, especially when you're guilty of it sometimes yourself. So you keep telling yourself, now, who am I to ask them? And I know I've done that. So I think for me, there are perhaps little tricks that you can use to bring somebody a little bit back. So if you're sitting someplace and you've got a leader or a boss who you're speaking and they're okay, and they're not there, it's not coming through and everything else, It's really about stop. I do a stop. I like this thing called stop and think. And stop means that you let it go by, and then you come back and you sit down and say, okay, that last meeting, perhaps, shall we reschedule? Shall we start again with a little bit, with the clarity and more clear guidelines as to how we take this forward? Use language like that, which is not calling somebody else out and saying that there wasn't, but it's basically saying, should we, maybe now is not a good time for us to finish this conversation. Can we suggest another time when we can really address A, B, C? So then you're really calling out what are the things that you saw are falling short, and calling out that you need a different time to perhaps address them. I think that's one of the ways of doing it. Basically doing it is, I find also silence on your part is very good, because if somebody's not there and they're right, just silent, because somebody, if you can call mindfulness from somebody else as well in so many other ways. It's almost like calling them out on it, because if they're not there and they're just rambling their own things, and you can see that your silence sometimes, if somebody is conscious enough, will realize, but why are they not responding? And at that point, they may recognize the fact that, oops, maybe they're not as mindful. What do they need to? And then now you have your platform and you could address the points that you want to raise. I mean, there's so many different ways of doing it. But in life, I've found you get the best results always by the kindness and the gentleness with which you do things. If you're confrontational, you will never get the best result, is my only advice I'd give to people.
Okay. Continue asking your questions on the chat line. I will ask them. Sanjay, yes, you can go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that for me, silence has worked best. When you just become silent, somebody will take attention. Why did something become silent? Number one, I really like her point of kindness. Sometimes you get ignored even with the most precious people around you. Then you have to use the word, Mheshimiwa, boss, I'm talking to you. So, when you use those kind words now, they understand that there is something amiss here, which needs attention. So, when it's Mama Zura, you start saying Shikamo 5 times, she'll give you attention. Thank you.
That's the other thing. I also noticed that the choice of words becomes very, very intentional when you actually
very important.
Yes, yeah, and how you address them. There is, I'm still going to ask everyone to ask questions on the chat, because I can see some hands up, but we want to just make this just a chat. So please feel free to put the questions on the chat, and then we can then share them. There's one more question here. Multitasking also contradicts with the concepts of stillness and mindfulness in our own agenda. I know I have struggled with the fact that I have a million things to do, and of course I look at my to-do list, and I also look at my timelines, and I'm like, June is here and I haven't met half my targets. Oh my goodness. How have you managed to navigate that? Just being able to refocus and get away from the personal push that you give yourself towards doing many things to achieve so much.
That's good. So I think this is also linked to self-awareness. There will be sessions and there will be meetings, or there may be even, first of all, if you multitask, it just sends the wrong signal, particularly if you are with many people. But I know that I've personally been told a few times that, hey, you multitask well, because I can give attention and I can do something else. But you need to know in which moments you can multitask, and there are completely areas where you need to focus. So like I said, if I like what Patricia said, she sometimes goes to the meeting 3-4 minutes earlier, so you get to prepare yourself. Now, as you are doing that, you're also setting up your mind, and I think sometimes as leaders, we're pretty used to some meetings. The first 10 minutes will be what? Will be minutes of the last meeting, will be matters arising. So you kind of have a rhythm that is there, and sometimes some of us use that to multitask, to say what else needs to be sorted here. But you always need to, like I said, if you want to avoid and eliminate people multitaskers, it's become natural. We all are distracted. I mean, tell your team to put the phone off. It's going to be crazy, nowadays. It's just unacceptable. It's almost like we have encroached in somebody's life, out of nowhere, and people didn't have phones 10 years ago, and it was just very okay.
Yeah.
But like I said, the more you start your meeting in understanding why are we here and what will success look like, it kind of gets people to more attention. But I know I multitask, in quite a few events, which is very true of me, and that's why, as Patricia said, we are in a journey. You are best able to find yourself and see whether you are really impactful or not. But when you are a leader, the challenge is always that, when you do something, you run the risk of somebody else copying you. And when they copy you, they don't understand how you do it. And I think being mindful is also about being mindful of others. This is very important. How people, you are constantly on the spotlight. Where from the time I enter my office or I enter into a meeting, including in this session, people are watching me, and many will kind of see me as a role model, so they'll copy me, but they don't know the intention behind me. So it's also important you're mindful of how others think. Thank you.
Yeah, how they're perceiving you even as you carry out your day to day. Okay, so Patricia, let me ask you. Now that you've been practicing this more often with your team, with the organization, what are the benefits you've seen when it comes to just that engagement, that interaction with your team, or with even the various boards that you serve as you're making decisions?
I think the first thing is you give confidence to people to contribute. Because there's a degree of safe environment that people feel is in play when people are mindful. Mindfulness is a sense also of sincerity, because then they're feeling your presence, they're feeling you're there and everything else. So when they get that sense, you're creating an even safer environment. Safe environments, then what they do is they encourage more people to speak. If more people speak, it means you're getting more contributions, you're growing people even more. And I think for me, that's been one of the best journeys that I've had. So because I know I have a lot to say most times, I have also learned to just shut up and really not say anything. And because the minute we'd come into a meeting, I've read it, I have the ideas, and maybe I'm in a hurry because I'm going to the next meeting. So I'm like, okay, that one we've done. Okay, I've agreed that one. Yes, great. Okay, let's move on. It's fantastic. In your head, you're saying, I'm being efficient. And you guys should be very grateful that I'm so efficient, that I've agreed with all these things, we're moving quickly and you can move on to the next. But there's the other side. If you're mindful, that you recognize that in doing that, you've not given people the opportunity to be heard. And slowly, if they don't get the sense that they're heard, they then get a sense they're either irrelevant, their contributions don't matter, and slowly they keep quiet, and then you actually fail them in their leadership, and they'll never grow. So it always becomes you who has the ideas, and we move on. And at the end of the day, in the long run, the other thing you'll create might be even resentment or whatever it is. So if you learn to, what mindfulness allows you to do is stop still and also think of the impact that something you think is good for you, or good because you've assumed it's good for all, the impact that it has on others as well. And that's something I think I'd like to urge everybody to recognize, that sometimes, yes, we come in and we want it to be done efficiently, and we're saying, let's move on quickly in the interest of time, as we say, in the interest of time. Yeah. And so, yeah, that one's fine. Yep. No. Yep. Agreed. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's move. Great. Yes. You think it's in the interest of time, but that interest of time has a huge interest on the impact it has on the leaders that you grow and the people that you're with. That is not mindfulness. Mindfulness is, yes, you can still do that, but also giving people the opportunity to be heard, to sit down and say, this is what we have. How do we play this? And in a lot of times when you ask open questions like that, people are happy to go with what you are saying, because they're also conscious. They have been allowed to sit at the table as well. Yeah. So that's another thought I'd like to share.
Oh wow, I think that's really powerful, and it sounds like it's an investment, but the impact has also interest in terms of what it adds on. You know, thinking about the and simply putting it in our everyday actions. You know, time out, I have 5 minutes. What can you tell me? In fact, I think I'm guilty
Mm,
of that as well. So, and not really understanding that, you know, then getting to hear from the team. There could be better ideas than yours. There could be more efficient ideas than yours. And then people then belonging. And, you know,
Yeah.
there's something you've said here that is becoming a big word, psychological safety. You didn't put it that way. You said
Mm,
people, they have a safe space to share.
mm,
But the thing is it's becoming a really big thing about creating psychologically safe places for people to work, because we've seen well-being
yeah.
being discussed as well in at this forum. So
And the other thing I'll just add, Vicky, that is also a mindful conversation, is that if you look at my team, a lot of the times I don't lead a lot of the meetings. Initially, the first suspicion thing was, because you just want to escape, because maybe you know you want to duck and you could be doing something else because your video is off or whatever. No, actually, the idea is the minute you start asking every single member to lead the team meetings, yeah, it then allows others, then you indirectly force mindfulness, because they don't know when the next time they're going to lead, how they're going to do it. So they better listen, and they better be there and cultivate their own style of doing it. Yeah. So I
mm,
think that's another very simple trick of trying to make sure everybody comes to the table. It works both ways, because it works in terms of growing people to be leaders, but in a very quiet way, it also encourages people to pay attention, because then they when it comes to their turn, they need to know how to do it. So yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's one of those things. Yeah.
true. And Vicky, I'm just going to add that in our bank also we tend to rotate chairs sometimes. So, I could get into a meeting and say, my head of HR or my CFO or somebody else should chair. What it gives me as an opportunity is it actually gives me an opportunity to be silent. And I observe, how my leaders interact with peers and how they interact with you. So it's a good time for you to start self-reflecting, but also reflecting on the meeting. And that's really, again, being mindful to say, are people talking more when the peer is talking? Is the dialogue the same type? And
Yeah.
you'll find out so many things by just, what Patricia said, the ability for somebody else to lead.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I'm going to share now just two last questions, and then we can ask Zuhura to give a vote of thanks to you, lovely people. Ian asks to both of you, how do you see the link between mindfulness of a leader and the team being accountable for behaviors and standards within that team? How do you see that link? I think I can start with either of you. Who feels ready to take it?
Question,
Question
which
is
question is that again?
the last question. How do you see the link?
How do you see the link between? Okay.
Mindfulness of a leader and then the team being accountable for behaviors and standards within that team.
Good,
Um,
Patricia. Yeah, go on.
no, you go, Sanjay. You started talking first. I'm mindful here.
No, I actually did not have an issue with you starting. Please go ahead.
Okay, I think for me, mindful of a leader. Um, there's a very simple thing that I'll just ask. I'll just pose out there. If you get the sense that somebody cares for your well-being, are you going to be a better person or are you going to be a worse person? Now, I would say that if you feel that somebody cares, listen, hears you, because you then get into a space where you worry about it, it's not just so much about letting yourself down, it's also about letting them down. I can say that accountability becomes much higher. It's very simple. Even as you've heard kids sit down and say that, why are you here? Why aren't you there? Oh, but my parents don't care anyway what I do. So, you know,
Yeah.
what does that say? It's flippant. And And somebody might be saying it, a child might be saying it out of, I'm in a great place, but actually they're not saying it nicely. There's a sense of hurt around that, right? If you apply that then in this particular sense as well, that I always believe that if I feel that my boss is there for me and they hear me, and it puts so much onus on my responsibility and my accountability, that I'm going to behave much better. If on the other hand, I feel they actually don't care, I'm a minion, I'm just somebody, whatever, my behavior also reflects that same sense that, why should I be there? Why should my behavior be a lot more accountable? After all, they don't care, they don't listen, they're not there. Yeah. So I think there's a very, very strong link, and it becomes even more powerful when it's not just transactional. And that is where, as Africans, we should never lose this, and we should never allow this virtual screen time thing take that away. The culture of asking people how they are, how are you,
Ubuntu
is very my meetings every week with my team, our first meeting, every meeting I have, it always starts with check-in. And what checking in is everybody says how they've been, what is going on. And you can say anything, yes? From the fact that you did a bungee jump, to the fact that you learned a new recipe, to the fact that your kid has done this. It's really checking in so that we hear how you are as a person, as an individual, what's going on. Before then we move to the transactional business. So it's standard. Anybody who leaves, okay, checking in. So, and we all go around and everybody checks in.
Yeah, so it's kind of finding out how they're showing up.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. So then you create a high performance team because you're all accountable for each other. You know where everybody is. You're building on each other's strength. And even if I'm not there, by the way, half the time, I could be on a golf course. Let me tell you, nobody will notice anything. It's only that there might be that sense that the presence isn't there, but there's absolutely no difference at all.
Yeah. Sanjay, you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, again, I was just trying to tell Patricia that Ian is being a bit naughty because he spent time with my team. He's one of our coaches, actually. He spends, he's helped us in our leadership journey. So a few things besides what Patricia said is, for you to connect mindfulness to behaviors and accountability. Number one is, your mindfulness strengthens or becomes much more obvious when you all are looking at the same North Star. What are you all trying to achieve? So if you have that clarity, then you know where to focus. So that's one. Number two is, like I said, for us, we've also gotten to a space where we've created a purpose for our leadership team. And that purpose for our leadership team also includes how we will behave. We will influence, we will impact, and we've kind of created a polite peer pressure model to police that, because we have to be reminded, it's not that once you write something that it will be followed. So that's the third thing. But what is important is that, like I said, if you have every conversation and you bring clarity on what is expected from each other, then that kind of brings the right kind of behavior. But it's not easy because people are very distracted. So I think one of the things that we are trying to get better with, and if you ask my head of HR and few of my colleagues who are on the call, they say we are in a world of pollution. There's just so much that keeps hitting us: information, tasks, regulators, clients, technology. So I think what we need to get better with in terms of mindfulness and also then behavior is try and say, what are 3 or 4 things that you will do that is going to be transformational? So as long as you bring back to, how am I going to hold people accountable? If you just hold them accountable for the 3 or 4 things that are going to be transformational, I think the rest can trend in, because you now manage the 80% using the 80-20 rule. Thank you.
Wow, yeah, and I also think something both of you shared a while back also helps in terms of making people accountable. You shared that you have to be also aware that not everyone is going to be ready, not everyone is going to be in the same journey, and if you're not mindful of that particular aspect, how are you then going to be able to know which team member needs more support and which other one doesn't? So, I think that also ties in very well in terms of the whole mindfulness thing. Now, in our poster, we had shared one quote, and I think it came from you, Sanjay. Not I think, it came from you, Sanjay. And it said that you cannot stop a wave, but you can learn to surf. And now going back, we've talked about leadership. Now coming back to you as individuals, are those, and I'm sure our listeners would like to hear, in those times when the wave has come, it's come, it's high and it's tall. How have you? What are the things you've used to surf? What have been your surfing boards for that particular season? As we wind up, and then I ask Zuhura to close.
That's a very good question. And many years ago that I did an activity, and I was very privileged to go to Side Business School in Oxford, and
Sorry, Sanjay, you're muted. Sanjay, sorry.
sorry, yeah, okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Actually, it was my
Yeah,
fault.
no worries, no worries. I said many years ago, I attended a leadership course in Side Business School in INSEAD,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, in Oxford, and we were asked a nice question, and this is probably what we should all do. Say, close your eyes, and we all closed our eyes, and they said, think about the best leader in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about the best leader? So if you use the same question on this call, and we're getting out of time, otherwise we could have done this,
Mm-hmm.
and we said, so what comes to mind? And some people say he was very inspiring, he was very motivating, he touched my soul, he was a role model, many things came to play, you know and so we asked them, so but don't you remember the leader who beat the budget by 2 times? Don't you remember the leader who constantly met the targets?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, when you are in a thunderstorm, the best solution is really to look at the human side of the aspect.
Mm-hmm.
What counts is humanity. It is empathizing. It is really really looking at heart, mind, and then soul. Is really touching. Is asking people how they're feeling. You get a lot of answers from that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I am very blessed and extremely privileged that I have a ton of network. So I've learned never reinvent the wheel. The first thing I do is, one, we plan for crisis. As an organization, there's a lot of effort that goes to plan for crisis. But two is, there's always somebody in life who's gone through this. So your ability to reach them and get some insightfulness from them is important. And third is really, if you are self-aware and you're aware of your team, you generally know what to do. But that's not going to be working on numbers. It's really touching hearts and souls.
Mm. Oh, thank you. What about you, Patricia?
What helps me surf the wave, right? I think there's a number of things. I think the first thing is knowing, just getting back into my head and telling myself that I have a safe place, I have a haven called home, and I
Mhm.
could always retreat there. That's fantastic. The second thing is just having a group of people who I could go vent with, and have the ability to sit back and just talk and share, and it takes me a while to say what's exactly there, but even if I'm just venting around the circle, it really really helps. Just that safe place of being with people who talk to. And I think the older you get, also the one thing that you wind up doing is you wind up really being only with the people you want to be with. So that really is a fundamental difference. I know a ton of people, and I will know them, and it's cursory and everything else, but there's only a smaller group of people I'll make time and I'll spend time with because I enjoy the company. I want to be with them and everything else. And that I think, for me, anybody in your life, that's something you need to start to choose. Really being with the people who make you happier, content, make your heart, and the different friendships will bring different things to you. Identifying that makes a very big difference. So different groups bring different things to me in my life. And then from a work perspective, I think it's taking time off. I have learned very late in life the ability of being able to go away on my own. And it's so hard. My God, you do it, but then, even as you're alone, by the time you unwind and come down and you fiddle, you jump, you go out, just that ability to be still on your own is something that I've also learned in terms of how to be still and to surf and to deal and everything else. What is left now is for me to write. And that's what I want to start doing. I don't know if that helps. I think those are some of the tips that I have taken into consideration.
So by writing, you mean journaling or writing the story of your life?
Both. I have to journal to write the story. I'm still determined that I'm going to write. I'm still trying to figure out what.
Oh, wow, wonderful. So
yeah.
I like what Sanjay said, knowing that this crisis, someone out there who I know must have gone through it. So I guess in a way that's your safe haven of
Yes.
who you're going to reach out to.
Yeah.
And also having a secluded place. And for you, Patricia, it's friends or home that you can just go there and let go. And I think the thing of getting away, I don't know for you, Sanjay, that's the same thing of being able to get away, drop it, and recharge, rejuvenate, and recuperate, as they say. It's something that I guess a lot of us forget because they keep saying that you can't give out of an empty pocket or an empty
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, a way of giving in. So allow me to just introduce Mama Zuhura to this call. She's somewhere here. And what I want her to do is just give a vote of thanks to you wonderful people. We are so, so grateful for you sharing both authentically what you've been, what you've done, giving us really relevant examples as to how you managed to handle a lot of things that have come through and helped us see the benefits of mindfulness in the real world, not in the, the Zen moment world. But let me not go into it. Mama Zuhura, you're here, you're ready. Please, welcome. You're muted though. Now you're unmuted. We can hear.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. It was my phone ringing, and it's again all those distractions that we talk about. I would like to very, very much thank Sanjay and Patricia. It was a very wonderful, and I can see in the chat how people are happy that you have handled the topic very well. And we had a lot of feedback on the quotation that we have here. You can't stop the wave, but you can learn how to surf. And many people were asking, this is a very interesting thing, but the way you have presented yourself, the experience that you have given us, it is all about how you manage your internal climate. And you are very, very, very empathetic about how you need to manage your internal climate. But later on, you are talking about also how to care for yourself, because if you are not really managing your internal climate, you cannot manage anybody else, you cannot make an impact on somebody else. And that was also coming out very powerful. And we see we are living in this world where there is a lot of distraction and discussion on mindfulness. I've seen some participants or audience who are saying this is the first time they're discussing this, and the way you related it with leadership, it is very interesting. Of course, the journey are different. People are not at the same level, but then the ability of the leader to make sure that the team is with him or her and the team is moving in a steady, pace. It is very clear what is coming out. But there is something which is very interesting that also you pointed out, not being able to recognize the gifts that other people bring into the team. All this perspective that can add the team and make it bigger also came out very, very well. And I can say that both of you have done justice to this particular topic. We were planning it with Vicky, and we were thinking about who can really bring to life, the question of mindfulness, which we teach in our emotional intelligence sessions. And you are the best in terms of how you brought it, first by your experience, and how you were able to demonstrate in your leadership the kind of leader, how you are able to listen to other people and make them be part of the greater things that you are doing. So I think what we can say, you have spent your beautiful time with us. It is expensive time that you have spent with us, but I think you have benefited quite a number of people. I've seen many people engaged in this call, and I'm sure this conversation is not ending today. Sanjay and Patricia, the conversation continues. And if you want to write books, please do write a book about your experience. I'm sure many people will learn from it and become better leaders. This world is looking for people who can be mindful, be intentional, but intentional on good things, because you can be paying attention but to wrong things. And they need more leaders who are not coming from the spirit of condemnation. They're coming from the spirit of appreciating the beauty everybody's bringing on the table. And also leaders who are able to stop and smell the roses on the way, because we know you have all this distraction, but if you can stop and smell the roses and energize yourself to energize other people, then you become an inspiring leader. So I must say, this is a very fantastic presentation, very good insights that we have gotten from you. And I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody who is in this call. I see people from Germany who have joined us, from Kenya, from Rwanda, from other places. And it seems that, yeah, Uganda, yes. I see my friend from Uganda. I see many people who have joined us. And this is a conversation because the world has some kind of bruises, and we need leaders who can heal the world, leaders who can heal the team, leaders who see beyond the numbers, leaders who can bring conversation to a collective wisdom and making everybody, even the person who has not spoken, feel like I'm part of this particular collective wisdom. And this is what we are crying for. This is what we are calling for many leaders to do that. And the more we do it, will impact our society in such a way that we become better and we become even greater, because the more you impact other people, the greater you become. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. We don't take it for granted. We'll continue seeking you out because you are the best. And when you are the best, of course, you'll be asked many times. Thank you, Vicky. Over to you.
No, I think you put it very well, Sanjay. I mean, sorry, Ruzuhura. No, I'm mixing names everywhere. Yeah.
Mindfulness.
Yes, mindfulness. I need to focus. Maybe you can have your last parting shot, Sanjay and Patricia, and we can wrap it up and have a wonderful evening.
No, I think it's been wonderful that we were able to share a bit of our life. For me, I just want to remind everybody that you've never been taught what mindfulness is. So first you have to learn and then practice. Practice, 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 practice. Even if you start with a minute and make it 2 minutes, make it 3 minutes, it's just practice that will make you better. Because otherwise you are practicing destruction all the time. So that's probably my biggest takeaway. Again, happy to have participated, and thank you, Mama Zura, for giving me the opportunity to talk to Patricia also. I've learned so much about her, and thank you, Vicky.
Indeed.
You're welcome, Patricia.
Turn your videos on. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the biggest lesson. And I say it lightly, but it's the little light things that really make a difference, because from a mindfulness perspective, it's one way. When I know I want to be mindful, that's what I do. But having said that, I think the biggest message that I want to leave is, it's a journey. Don't expect that you're going to wake up and you're going to learn how to breathe and feel every droplet of breath from the minute it touches the tip of your nose and it goes down into your belly. It's not possible. Some people are better at it than others, and you never know. So just accept it as a journey. Go with the intention. Recognize that you need it. I think the most important thing, don't do it because you've sat here and people have told you it's a buzz thing and you want to get caught on the buzz thing. No. Ask yourself, is this something that I really need? And if you start to recognize some of the tips, the things that we've done about it, read about it, there are lots of YouTube videos on it, understand it, and then how role can play to you and life at the stage you're at. That I think is what I feel is the most important thing about this thing. As with everything else, until it is something that means something to you at that particular time, it's not going to make an impact for you. It's going to be a box ticking exercise. And this shouldn't be what this is about. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, Patricia, and even thank you, Zuhura, for the vote of thanks.
You're welcome.
So as we all leave, we can turn our videos and say bye.
At least we are here.
For one tiny moment, I can see Tom, I can see Kasim, I can see Maggie Kigozi, all the way from Uganda. You can see
Hi,
Jivan.
Maggie.
Hi, Vicky. Patricia.
Hi, Maggie. Hi, Anthony. My goodness, I'm seeing so many friends who are hiding here.
Yeah, Janet.
Yes, we were all hiding.
Anthony, you are hiding behind there.
Yes, we were. Great
Lovely
job.
to see you all. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye. Take care.
Hi,
Bye-bye.
All right,
Take
take
care.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All of you. Bye.
Bye.